So first of all, I just want to thank all the amazing panelists. The reason I kind of wanted you guys as a group is because you all kind of participate in making tools that facilitate music creation, which I think is kind of a new thing that's happened. I think historically there's a lot of great things where visuals more adorn music, but now you guys are kind of infusing it into creating music, and I think that's really awesome. So I have a question. What drove you guys to, union to bring music and visuals together? Hilda. Johnny, you want to kick off?
Sure. For my project, I think it's a lot. I'm a big fan of music. I pretty much listen to music all the time. And as somebody who doesn't make music, it's part of this itch, or scratch that I want to itch. To either A, bring it closer, or B, give music some props in terms of my art, elevate it if that's possible.
So very similar. I'm a mostly more technical person, and then visual design, interaction design. But I listen to music all the time. I'm obsessed with it. I love music, and I think that making it more accessible. I've written music in the past, and the tools are so technical and confusing, and it made me feel like I didn't know how to use a computer at all. So I feel like that's a thing that more people want. So I was more just in the angle of people who don't make music, but if there was a way that they could, then they would, because it's a natural expression.
The combination of audio and visual, we've all had those experiences where we're completely transported by the combination, and one without the other doesn't quite capture you in the same way. And when they align perfectly, it just feels so gratifying or so magical.
So with our app, our website, it was kind of, I guess I'm not really a musician, and we didn't really, I guess, just through the process of kind of iterating on this tool, I guess the visuals became pretty important, because it's kind of what you're, I guess, what you're looking at, and you kind of want to see everything that everything that's making the music kind of in front of you, so you can have a handle on it, so you can change it. So I guess having the relationship between the audio and the visual be really tight was important for that reason.
I have a background in music and in visual arts. I don't really know which one came first, but I think that Ryan and I collaborate very well because of his insane programming talent and his artful sense of what feels playful and organic. And I think that when we work together, it allows us to focus on our respective strengths really well. And with Sequence in particular, we wanted to do what Ryan, I guess, just said, is make the visuals and the sound come as close together as possible in a toy-like environment. So we didn't want to intimidate people who didn't have a musical background. We wanted them to just drop right in and play around and hear something that was pleasing. And that was the biggest challenge that we definitely wanted to be the #1 goal in Sequence, was to make it a toy. It's not an instrument. Once people were using it, and we saw hundreds of thousands of creations from this toy, we realized how successful that was, and we actually do plan to continue in the experiment of making music and visuals one experience.
I would say that I'm primarily a sound person, and at a certain point that I actually reconciled myself with that I had to work with visuals in order to get people to pay attention. And that was actually, in the end, you know, also more edifying for me, because there are certain things where it's like sound is just hard to understand, and for people to sort of grasp what's actually going on, and that it's, you know, incredibly useful as a marker for me to be able to understand more things about perception and sound.
Cool. So basically, you know, using visuals kind of allowed you to tap more into musicality. So my second question is, your creations all variously inspired, you know, culture production. What are some awesome or weird ways that your project has been used? Maybe
Start from that side.
Okay.
My answer is really short because I haven't been able to test it out on people yet. So yeah, I don't have the answer.
Well, in that case, in your ideal world, what weird way have people used it?
I definitely. What's that? What about it? People use it. Oh, yeah, people use it. I guess my favorite thing is if you take away the piece of technology and what the posture is, or what the behavior is. So with the Cloud Me Plate exhibit, I actually found that, you know, if you took, you know, didn't look at what they were doing, that people were like being like they were forgetting themselves, and that they were just making music, and it wasn't about sounding good or looking good. And so that was, I mean, so that would carry over, I guess, to this app. But again, it's like just getting rid of more of a self-consciousness about how you approach music, but also kind of getting into a flow state about learning by doing something, and having that ease be challenging, and not making it really too simple for people. Like, I feel like too often musical apps talk down to people and act like they don't understand musical concepts, or, you know, and I think that there can be very advanced musical concepts sort of approached if they are approached in the right way. So ideally that would be it.
What was the question? How people have used it in interesting ways?
Yeah, what are some
Awesome ways?
that your project has been used?
Okay.
Yeah.
We made an installation version of Sequence, actually a few different iterations, and it was recently, it's still actually down there, it's in San Jose Tech Museum, and we made a kiosk version, which is a big touchscreen for Sequence. And that is a different experience for people, because we found that people didn't erase what was there when they arrived at the exhibit. So as you saw from our demo, there's no limit to the amount of creatures you can add to the system. And we had never really tested, I guess, the max. And so in the database of the creations, we found that people were filling it up until it crashed. And that was pretty incredible, because the sound of it was sort of this cacophony of just a mess, of just, you know, just...
Can you imitate it?
It's just like... you know, like dubstep, essentially. That was pretty hilarious and incredible. And also the features that we added to the installation version, we allowed people to change tempo, and we allowed people to change certain effects, the delay, and when people found that you could change the tempo to 9999, and then fill up the grid, and then just, you know, blast all these little life forms, the music actually just turned into more of a texture, and you can get this sort of crazy drone sound that's not like a plink, 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 it's more like a and that was really fun to see. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or another idea.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say something about that, something that Gabe and Mira both said, which is like really like not limiting people, and I think it's really important that people can sort of can take take your thing to the maximum and really like blow it out and make it sound like horrible, but like there's some really interesting sounds that you can get out of that too. So like I think it's important to not confine people too much to sort of like what your idea of like what sounds or looks good is. Yeah.
So I originally made Rouge as a teaching tool because I teach touch design workshops sometimes, and so I think that I just got a lot of pleasure out of watching people use it to learn, and then get these ideas like, oh, can I make this with it? Like so to sort of push the bounds of the structure.
Probably giving kids or non-musical people the app and then realizing they can record their own sounds and then see that they're experimenting with it. A lot of people put videos up on like YouTube or like from anywhere from well-produced videos that it's just one instrument in to somebody just in her bedroom like performing like to a camera like a 2-minute thing that's that she made entirely with her voice. So that's been the most unexpected. And I guess also we made a 4-foot by 8-foot hardware version that you could like play by stomping on, and the pads lit, and Reggie Watts did a performance. That was pretty crazy. And you could you'd step and record, and it was this like jumping around experience instead of like on your phone, which is very different. But we don't actually use that very often.
That's really cool. I'm gonna have to look up that video. Yeah. One thing that was really unexpected, that when Lilitone and I were kind of developing it, I had originally made it on a mono, which is like this MIDI controller that has a bunch of buttons on it, and so we kind of assumed like, okay, we just need something that has a lot of buttons that a lot of people could access, and we chose the keyboard just kind of like, yeah, there's buttons. But kind of one of the main ways people shared it was like, hey, this is what my name sounds like and looks like. And like that was totally unexpected and really, really delightful. And I got a lot of emails of people that were like, hey, can you make this like a text editor? And I just want to hear and see what like typing all day sounds like.
Very cool. I think the allure of everything that you guys have made is really in when someone thinks about music, about learning music, they're like, oh man, I like really want to do that. I want to be a cool musician. But then they think, but then I gotta buy like a flute to be really cool, or like a guitar, or I gotta pay classes, and then I need a studio. And I really have to commit all my time, and then even after I invest all that, I only pick up maybe like one instrument in a lifetime. Sure, sorry about that. Yeah, that totally touches on, letting people experiment without feeling they have to commit. So I have a question from the audience, and Ollie. When in the process of composing music, do you typically get involved in designing visuals? Do you often work together from the very beginning, composing the music and visuals together, or do you mostly produce visuals for finished music, or vice versa? Lots of questions there. I can repeat it if you need.
Sometimes I'll do like live visuals in sort of a VJ setting or something for a band. And in that case, it's always making something that's to the music, and that's sort of the more typical process for me. So it was really fun in this last piece to actually drive the audio a little bit and to start with the visual concepting, and then have it be this really close dialogue between the two.
So I mean, it's a little bit different when you're creating like an interface to create music, because the interface is kind of like it's all you see when you're like the two are sort of like tightly coupled, and they kind of have to go together. So yeah, it's there from the very beginning, and you sort of like you have to kind of design them together, and you get feedback from sort of like, okay, like what are the when you like design an interface and it allows you to do a new type of performance, and then you think, okay, well now I want to add this other thing, and that kind of informs how the interface changes. So you kind of like bounce back and forth.
I wanted to add something specific to sequence, in that we had a challenge getting the amount of notes to sound at once. With that software, we actually built that in Flash, and we have visual programming backgrounds, and we ended up writing a synthesizer first, which was based on the graphics pipeline. So we actually wrote the waveforms of the synth to the graphics and then read the graphics back through the audio pipeline. I don't know if that makes sense. We can go into that, but that just means that we used our skills in the graphics realm to generate the audio. And so that allowed us to actually make these little creatures the literal representation of the audio. And we consistently wanted to make both of them one experience. I mean, that was the goal for that project.
Did you start out wanting to use creatures, or was that something that later evolved?
That was from the beginning. We definitely wanted to make not a linear, we wanted to make a non-linear compositional experience. So we didn't want a beginning or an end to a song. We wanted to make an audio space, and we also wanted to make synthesis. So we started with an idea of, well, what if we could make a group of organisms that all made individual sounds? And the step sequencer was kind of a riff on the idea of the creature's DNA. And you would edit the DNA, and then you would change the waveform envelope, and that literally represented what the creature would look like. So you had, you're editing the visual of the creature, which literally changes the sound of the creature. And then these groups of creatures create one soundscape that you're navigating through.
Yeah, just to echo, it kind of sounds like what's really successful with all of these projects is that there's this ping pong between visuals and audio, and Patatap, which is by far my most successful audio visual thing, was very much that. I kind of came up with visuals based on an artist that I was going to be VJing for, and then kind of showed this collection of animations to the composer's Lullatone, and they came back with like way more sounds that were not sounds that I was thinking of when I was like making the animations. I was thinking of other sounds, and then that gave me more ideas, and we made maybe like a couple hundred sounds and animations that, you know, most of the process was actually just editing and curating, like, well, we can't have everything, so, you know, how do we make something that feels compositionally in terms of audio, like the full spectrum of sound, as well as, you know, what fills the space visually. That was definitely like what we spent most of the time figuring out.
Okay, we have a question from Anshamina, and this kind of dives into a question I have as well, which is, where do you see your projects going in the next 5 years? And her question is, the focus today is on creation, but what's the audience like for consuming synesthetic music? You know, do you plan on putting out albums or concerts, or mostly live performances? Yours popular today.
Ryan and I have always wanted to make an iPad version of Sequence. In fact, that was the original intention of that project, but we designed Sequence before the iPad was actually released in 2010. We knew it was coming, but we just decided to make a web version that allowed a greater audience to participate. And I think that some of the ideas that we want to see in music creation is definitely a collaborative experience. You know, people sharing and the remixing. You know, love the idea of people making a composition and then having that being a starting point for a new creation by someone else. You see something inspiring and you want to riff on that, and encouraging that, and encouraging, you know, collaboration and copying and remixing, and yeah, just having fun with it. Definitely emphasizing the toy aspect of it.
So I'd like a goal with the sort of like the newer version is kind of like we want to make it like the current version is kind of it's not very performable, as you saw. Like it kind of like goes into these modes and like we feel like with a sort of like a touchscreen, it kind of gives us an opportunity to really make like a performance instrument that can kind of like can go from being a toy to something that someone could actually use in a like to perform with like other instruments and stuff. So so MIDI and also sort of like iterating more on the user interface and performing with it as we're designing it is going to be really important. I guess I'll just like add something to that I've been thinking about lately, which is so I was just in this sort of like Max MSP course at SynMat in Berkeley, and David Wessel had this sort of like gave his presentation, and like one of the sort of like concepts that he kind of like laid out was the concept of babbling. So a baby, like when it's learning to speak, it kind of like vocalizes all of these sounds and kind of like it feels out the kind of space of language that it can use. So I think in designing an instrument, that concept of like allowing people to babble and kind of like feel out the instrument and kind of like see the extents of the space is going to be really important.
The element of instrument being a toy, that was also, I guess, instrument or toy is the way we look at it, and not really app or software. And the constraint, like the design constraint of just something that's extremely easy and that kids can use, is sort of necessitating multiple applications. So that's where you can explore different aspects of sound. So one would be melody, or synthesizer generator. What does that look like? Well, you can change the timbre of something. You can play different notes with the same timbre. So there's like a constrained axis of one type of interaction. So you can play. You can only worry about modifying one thing, and then you can explore that thing in a playful manner. And then that necessitates a really simple way of connecting. Like just the mention of MIDI, it's like I've tried to configure that. It's hard. It's really unapproachable for most people, and so it's also 30-year-old technology. So being able to treat the different instruments and with a essentially wireless protocol where you can play with each other is really the goal where it's heading also.
Yeah, I would kind of just add on to what everybody else has said in that I definitely think this kind of merge of visuals and audio or music is very much something that musicians like really want to tap into, and I wouldn't be surprised, if more musicians, maybe not in the next couple of years, but another generation are doing all of the things that we're doing, but like by themselves. And my hope is that a project like Patatap, just sparks or like gives a eureka moment to somebody else to realize like, wow, this is actually worth investigating and making, either enterprise grade software or product or whatever it is that can give people this type of expression.
So my proposal is that sometime in the next 5 years we have a little concert with everyone that's been using your apps. So now we'll open up the floor to any questions from the physical audience.
One question for sequence. How are the creatures interacting with each other? I mean, is it random, semi-random, can be programmed? Can you...
Did everyone get that?
So the question was how do the creatures interact with each other? Yeah, so they have an initial state which is essentially random. They sort of like explode from the center, and then they're all in a random place, and they all have so they're all driven by motors that are kind of attached to the impulses that come from the sequencer. So and each waveform has like a different style of motor that it uses. So the sine wave kind of like goes like this, and like the square wave kind of turns 90 degrees every beat. And then the only way that they interact with each other is just sort of like by moving each other out of the way. So they kind of like fighting for space, and they're trying to get to the center. And then sort of like the ones that are more active kind of like push out the ones that are less active.
Can that be, is that user controllable?
Yeah, you can drag them around and kind of like.
I need the algorithm that they can interact.
No. Yeah, it's not currently, no.
Okay, so.
I have a question.
Oh.
Luke, why is it called Keezy?
Absolutely no reason. It's just kind of a random thing. It turns out it's a word that a lot of rappers use. So the tweets that we get are pretty amazing sometimes. It's just like a slang word. It also rhymes with easy. That's it.
Cool. All right, well, thanks everyone. That wraps up our event. We're gonna have a little photo session. We're gonna put up some visualizations from the artists and put it against the display here. So if you wanna take photos here, give us like 2 minutes. Other than that, we do wanna make a call for volunteers for future ArtsTechSF events. So if you're interested, please just message us in the ArtsTech meetup board or come talk to Jackie. And all right, thanks guys.